Hi everybody and welcome to the Surface Interval in association with Mpora. How easy is it to fail at scuba diving? If you're asking this question, then you're probably thinking about signing up for a scuba diving course, or you've just signed up for your initial scuba course and you've seen the learning materials. Whilst it may feel like there is a lot to learn, training materials and what is asked of you isn't that tough, to be honest. That being said, you can still fail. You can't just throw money at your instructor and expect them to sign you off. It doesn't work that way in most dive centres. Each course is performance-based. You have to complete each part and be comfortable doing it. We're not expecting perfection, but just competence. When we're assessing students, we're looking to make sure that you're comfortable and you understand what's happening and you can complete the skills required on the course. We're not expecting 100% correct answers. You're allowed to get some wrong, don't worry about that. But how easy it is to fail at scuba diving. The first thing that you need to do is pass your classroom work. You need to spend some time reading through your materials and watching videos so that you understand all of the theory behind scuba diving. If you leave it all to the last minute or you just can't be bothered to do your book work, then you're going to struggle through the classroom section of your course. Your instructor is going to help you out to understand anything that you struggle to understand by reading it by yourself. But what they can't do is go through the entire curriculum with you, whilst other students who did the work sit there waiting for you to catch up. They've read the book, the instructor has read the book, so they're not going to read it again just for you. Most courses have a range of short quizzes throughout to test that you're understanding things as you go through. If you make mistakes here, not so much of a big deal. The small quizzes, don't worry too much about those. It's more so that your instructor can kind of gauge where you are and where you're struggling to what to focus on in the next part of the course. At the end of the classroom work, there's usually a test that covers everything that you've learnt so far. This you can fail, and if you fail, you do a different version of the test after your instructor goes through your wrong answers so that you understand where you went wrong, and then you just do it again, basically. If you keep failing, though, you won't be able to progress to the next step. It's quite rare that someone fails the final exam, and if they do, they usually pass the second time. I wouldn't worry too much about the exams. You would have to do something catastrophically bad to be kicked off a course at this stage. Before we let you play with the scuba gear, we need to make sure that you can actually prove to us that you can swim. This won't be triathlon levels of swimming with Olympic turns or anything, but you need to show us that 1, you can swim comfortably a certain distance, and 2, that you can tread water unaided for a certain amount of time. The key here is not to rush or get out of breath. It's not a race. There are no winners or losers, so just make sure that you swim the distance at your own pace. And when it comes to the survival float, or whatever they like to call it, the treading water section, take it easy. If you can, just kind of lay back and float. And for both the swim and the float, a whole lungful of air will help keep you afloat. That's a lot of buoyancy inside of your lungs, so deep breaths, don't breathe shallow, otherwise you're just going to struggle. One thing that can't keep you afloat is a wetsuit. If the water's cold or you choose to wear a wetsuit to keep yourself warm or whatever it is, then that's cheating, and we've already thought of that. Wetsuits float. So if you're wearing one, it's really easy for you to float on the surface in a wetsuit. So your instructor may need to put a small amount of lead on you to compensate for that buoyancy. If you cannot swim at all or you can't tread water, then please tell your instructor before jumping in the water for obvious reasons. And again, if you can't complete the swims, then you can't continue to the next stage, unfortunately. You can always come back another time and try again, but you won't be able to continue until you complete this stage. Now we get to the practical side of things. Your instructor is going to show you a bunch of skills that you need to repeat. Monkey see, monkey do. Not that I'm calling you monkeys or anything, but that's how it works. If you don't get it the first time, that's okay. Don't worry about it. You'll get a chance to try again. If you can't get it on your second or your third try, then your instructor is probably going to move on to something different, but then come back to it at a later stage. Some people struggle with some skills, and that's perfectly fine. That's why we practice them in a safe place like a swimming pool. But trying the same skill again and again and again and then failing each time can be very frustrating. So we often change and come back to it a little bit later so that you don't get frustrated and the rest of the class isn't just sitting around waiting for you, just adding more pressure. You can try it again later. Each training dive will have a whole list of skills that you need to complete. If you miss one or two of the skills, then you just won't get signed off for that entire dive. You will get signed off for the skills that you did complete, however. So not all is lost. In your logbook, your instructor will sign off each individual skill that you have completed, and then you can complete the remaining missing skills at a later date, or even on the next dive if possible. If skills keep getting pushed back though, and they start adding up, it just gets a bit too tricky, and we can only run a certain number of training dives in one single day. So try and do your best to complete the skills on those dives. It's not really a fail at this point, because you can always come back and try it again. Only you need to complete the dives that you didn't complete. But if you never come back, then yeah, that's a fail. Officially, those are the only hoops that you need to jump through. You need to do your book work, you need to do the pool work, and then you need to do your open water skills. But you also need to sort of scuba dive to a certain level between the skills. If you can't swim around and control your buoyancy on your training dives, or set up your own equipment without help, then your instructor may not sign you off. They have to consider your safety and the safety of others by giving you a cert card. Most divers pick up these basics pretty fast, so don't worry about them too much. But remember that even if you complete all of the skills, that doesn't mean that you automatically get signed off. Just swimming around in the water is a skill in itself that you need to complete. Again, this is pretty rare that you'll get failed just for this, but we are going to sit you down and talk you through it before we sign you off. It is important that you can literally just move in the water. It's okay if you can clear your mask and find your regulator and do all that kind of stuff, but if you can't swim around the reef without bumping into stuff and stuff like that, then we're probably not going to sign you off. If you don't complete the skills and you want to come back later, then don't wait around too long. The clock starts ticking as soon as you not complete, but you take your first course, and you only have a certain amount of time before you have to do the entire course all over again. So if you do struggle with a skill, try and book your remaining dives as soon as possible. Outside of entry-level courses, your chances of failing actually increase. Not just because the materials and the concepts are harder to understand, but what's expected of you is actually higher. Your instructor is going to expect a certain level of fundamental skills based on your previous training. It's understood that you can clear your mask and you can handle yourself in the water. That's why each advanced course will have prerequisite courses before you can sign up for it. If you turn up to the course and you struggle to set up your BCD or handle yourself in the water, your instructor will go so far to help and guide you, but all courses are performance-based. If you can't do each part proficiently, you won't get signed off, and you will have to practice and come back later to try again. Failure rates are usually fairly low on scuba courses. The way that they're structured, the way that your instructor has been taught, has all been very carefully considered to make it as efficient and easy as possible. And if you make a mistake, it's not the end of the world, just try it again. But as with most things, if you're a danger to yourself or others, you are going to fail. And yes, there are some things that we may ask you to do that are a little bit tough, but we build up to them to make it easier. And tears, they're not going to stop you from needing to complete a skill. If anything, they make it harder because your mask is just going to fill up with tears. Anyway, if you're worried about your first scuba course, then don't worry about it. You're going to have a lot of fun and learn a lot of new interesting skills. Just trust your instructor. They're going to look after you. Thank you for watching, everybody, and of course, safe diving.